Um, as you just heard, so we are recording the call. So if somebody was not able to make it, feel free to send this to them after we send out the follow-up email to this call with the recording. Hello, Rena. Thank you for joining us as well. So good morning, everybody. We're excited to have you all here so we can introduce the 2025 Peacebuilding Academy, or the PBA as we call it. My name is Jude Ahmi. I'm the program manager here at GFP USA, and I'm joined with my colleague Lindsay, the executive director. We're going to wait a few more minutes to let folks in. Actually, we're just going to go ahead and get started. If you haven't already, please write your name and organization in the chat and your role just so we can get better acquainted with one another. And before we start, just want to give a shout out to Laureus USA, Fight for Children, and the Gratitude Network. So these are our partners that are currently making this program possible. So yeah, welcome to this space, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing before we jump into it, is to watch the chat for any relevant guidance throughout this process in the call, and share any questions or comments you have in the chat box, and we'll answer them during our Q&A time at the end of the session. We'll walk you through who we are as an organization, what the Peacebuilding Academy is, how you can be involved, and then we'll have time again at the end to answer any questions that may have been unanswered. Again, this will be recording as well, so you can use this for reference later, send it to anybody who was interested but wasn't able to make it. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started on some background info, and I'll pass it off to you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Drew, and thank you to everyone who's joined today's session. My name is Lindsay McLean Opio, and I'm the Executive Director of Generations for Peace USA. GFP USA is an independent 501c3 nonprofit with roots in international peace building and development. We were founded in 2012 by Generations for Peace Global, which is an acclaimed international peace building organization that's headquartered in Jordan. And GFP Global has a network of over 20,000 local peace builders in 52 countries, including the United States. So today, Generations for Peace USA, we're comprised of this skilled US-based team that Drew and I are on, and a growing alumni network representing diverse identities and geographies and lived experiences from across the country. But we're united in our belief that a more peaceful world is possible, and we exist as an organization to make it happen now and for future generations. Our mission is here on the screen. It's to engage children, youth, and adults in learning, dialogue, and action that transforms their communities into places of safety and belonging for all. And we often are operating at the intersection of peace building and sport-based youth development. To date, we've implemented sport-based youth programs to transform conflicts and strengthen youth resilience to violence in Chicago and in Champaign, Illinois, and also in Washington, D.C. And we often take a systems approach. So we collaborate with organizations like you all who belong to relevant networks like Sport for Good Chicago, or the Fight for Children Youth Development Institute in DC, or most recently, the Gratitude Network, which is a global network of social entrepreneurs in 82 countries around the world. And in this way, we're not only helping to build the capacity of the individual organizations that we work with, but also the broader coalitions or networks that they belong to, which helps to strengthen the capacities for collective action and change around peace building outcomes. So we're really excited that with the 2025 Peacebuilding Academy, it's going to be a vehicle for us to have an even wider impact, especially now that we've brought Gratitude Network into the fold. And it's going to enable us to engage youth-serving organizations from the greater Chicago area, from the greater DC area, and now across the United States and the world, which Drew is going to tell you more about in the next couple of minutes. So back over to you, Drew, to tell us more about the PBA.
Thank you, Lindsay. So yeah, what is the PBA? So the Peacebuilding Academy, or again, the PBA, it's a 6-month virtual training program that's designed for organizations that work with youth and are committed to or interested in using sport as a means to address issues of conflict and violence in their direct communities. Participants will join a diverse cohort from Chicago, DC, and beyond to take a deep dive into peacebuilding approaches using sports and helping organizations build resilience in their communities through programming based on lessons learned from training sessions and the shared group calls, which we'll talk about a little bit more of the process of the training in the next few slides. The 2025 PBA includes self-paced training modules, assignments that you can apply from your teachings, and monthly sharing and learning calls with others in the cohort. So there will also be office hours for personalized mentoring and technical assistance. And participating organizations can expect to spend around 6 hours a month on the Peacebuilding Academy, and requested assignments for a total commitment of approximately 36 hours over the 6 month period. And then we can go to the next slide. So the purpose of the PBA, the main purpose is to help communities strengthen resilience against violence and conflict by equipping organizations with practical peace building tools and empowering them to promote sustainable peace through programming. So through sports-based programming, we can use games and team activities to build connections, foster mutual respect, and encourage positive change, amongst other things. Our goal is to support organizations in creating long-lasting impacts in their communities while being as participatory in their program creation as possible. So if you look on the screen, this is the program content. So this is our modules and our units that we'll be covering. The PBA consists of three main training modules, and we'll spend about 2 months on each module as we go through the assignments together. So module one focuses on identifying community needs, and we'll talk about what Sport for Peace is, how it's effective, how to use it, and how it's different from typical sports-based programming. Participants will create what's called a community map, which is a map that highlights assets, resources, religious and financial institutions, stakeholders, community landmarks, that sort of thing. And the community map helps us view the working parts of what make up a community. And then we'll also conduct what's called a community needs assessment, where you use the community map to identify and name the biggest needs in the community, the communities that you work. So in both exercises and all the exercises in the program, we encourage trainees to be as participatory as possible, and that's sort of the theme going through the entire 6 months. For module two, we'll focus on analyzing conflict, and we'll examine what peace and conflict theory is and conduct what's called the conflict analysis. So the conflict analysis is a tool informed by the community map and the community needs assessment to help us identify um, the root causes of the issues in our communities and identify all of the actors involved and those who it affects. And then last, with module three, we'll focus on integrating Sport for Peace into existing programming, where we'll put what we learned in module one and two into practice. So in the last module, we'll talk about how to effectively monitor and evaluate a Sport for Peace program to measure impact. We'll talk about how to create Sport for Peace games, and we'll be framing our programming to address the identified needs and how to implement those plans to create long-lasting, sustainable programs that have a positive impact. So at the end, we'll have a showcase as well at the end of the 6 months, where each participating organization can show off what they've learned and done with our other organizations in their network. That's how we'll close out the program. On the next slide, thank you. So there are some key things we'll focus on during the PBA over the course of the program. So first, participants will learn how to deepen their knowledge and skills on identifying community needs and analyzing conflict, and how to use sport to prevent and address conflict and violence to promote what's called conflict transformation. And we unpack that a bit more in the training as well. So we do this through training the cohort on how to conduct community needs assessments and conflict analysis and what it means to use sport as a tool to build peace. You learn how to create a practical plan to integrate peace building principles and practices into your existing work. And lastly, you'll connect and learn with like-minded organizations in the US and also internationally for the first time this year or next year in 2025 with our partner, the Gratitude Network. One of the bigger components of the Peacebuilding Academy is to promote a growing network of youth serving organizations to continue learning and finding best practices to serve youth going forward. So if you look on the screen, this is our 2024 PBA cohort. This is two cohorts, the DC cohort and the Chicago cohort joining together on one call. In the middle, we have one of our lead trainers from GFP HQ in Amman, Jordan, and then Lindsay and myself. So again, this PBA took place completely virtual earlier this year, running from January to August. We partnered and trained 5 organizations, 2 in the DMV area, the DC area, and then 3 in the Chicago area. A couple of our 2024 PBA members are actually here with us today, Kira and Glenda, and they'll share their experiences and some key takeaways for programming after this slide. And just thank you again for both being here. Before we hand it over to them, I wanted to highlight some of the impacts of the 2024 Peacebuilding Academy. The group of people you see on the screen, that is our cohort from last year. And we asked participants to share their biggest takeaways from the Peacebuilding Academy, and some of the things that they highlighted reinforced the importance of knowing a conflict at its root so you can address it to create positive change. And the Peacebuilding Academy is also meant to help participants grow personally, professionally, and while strengthening the organization's missions. It also gives participants tools to address conflicts so that they can continue creating programming that's impactful. One of our recent members said that the PBA allowed them to feel much more informed and confident in the ways that they can bring peace to their community. And other participants expressed how the training helped them plan for actionable change and work in their work. We had several organizations use unique tools to be as participatory as possible when completing the assignments. And this included gaining insight from youth that they serve to community members and other folks in their direct community. There was one exercise one of the participants used was to have youth draw the pictures of their community to add to their community map. That just includes folks of all abilities and all ages to still be participatory in that process. Another participant shared that their experience, saying that through the community needs assessment, they've been able to identify barriers that participants were facing and how to best support them and address conflict once it does arise. This again identifies the importance of addressing the root causes of the conflict, which is something that we focus heavily on during our training process. And lastly, when asked about biggest takeaways, there was a big emphasis on the importance of conflict transformation or using a conflict to generate positive impact. So this was reflected through another quote from a participant who said that the PBA helped them solidify their organization's goals and principles by emphasizing the importance of conflict transformation. So I'm now going to be passing it off to Kira and Glenda, former members of the 2024 PBA cohort. They're going to share more about their experience in the PBA and some ways that they applied lessons learned to their programming. So thank you both again for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and for sharing with us, and the floor is yours.
It's just gonna be me today. My boss Glenda is running a little late, but I don't know. I don't know if she'll hop on in time. But
No worries.
hello, everyone. My name is Kiera Johnson. I am one of the staff members, the programs analyst for So Kids Soar. We are based in the Washington D.C. area. We empower youth with physical and developmental disabilities to strive, own, achieve, and realize their potential. And and that's basically the gist of our organization. And we joined the PBA as Drew mentioned. We joined the PBA in January, along with another member of our another member of Fight for Children Junior Tennis Association, Junior JTCC, Junior Tennis. Ah man, I forgot that. But JTCC. And we joined four other organizations in Chicago, and seeing and being able to connect with four those four organizations from Chicago was very eye opening. It was great to hear the different organizations and their different goals and how why they wanted to be in the Peacebuilding Academy just to better themselves and and the people around them, which is great. Definitely one of the things that we tried to do. Yeah, it was Junior Tennis Champion Center. My bad. But but uh but anyway, our purpose is coming in. We work with people with disabilities. We are in that space in the DC area, and going in there, just looking to improve and just just better ourselves. And coming out of the PBA, we ended up doing two things to better improve ourselves. We ended up using picture questions for our participants who are and nonverbal and just participants in general. And then we also noticed that some of our folk our demographic is Spanish, so we worked on worked on translating our registration and surveys into more Spanish to make it more accessible to others. And I see that Glenda joined. So if Glenda, if you like to say some words, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was great having Drew and Lindsay's guidance through the process, but also just connecting with other organizations, especially small nonprofits, not just locally, but also in Chicago. think it's nice for us to all learn from each other, and we are aiming to all stay in touch. But like Kira touched on, we definitely learned from the other organizations we worked with, and also just what are great strategies that we can communicate to the rest of our staff or even our board when working through conflict.
Great. Thank you both for sharing so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I know you guys have a packed schedule, so thank you for joining us. And we'll talk a little bit more too about some of the things that they had touched on, especially when talking about working with other folks in the cohort during the sharing and learning calls. We'll touch on that in the next couple slides. But again, thank you both so much for your insight. It's genuinely appreciated. So yeah, we can go on to the next slide. So eligibility. We're going to talk about the eligibility requirements. So the PBA is open to youth serving organizations that meet the following criteria. The organization must be a nonprofit with a 501(c)(3) status or equivalent, or be fiscally sponsored by an organization. And we know this looks different depending on what part of the world you're living in. So we are open to something that is similar to a 501(c)(3) or anything like that. You must have a youth serving mission that benefits your community and have a willingness to use sport to address issues of conflict and violence in direct communities that you work. We do ask that there's a minimum of 2 organizational representatives who are nominated to participate in the PBA from each organization, preferably 1 staff member who directly engages youth in programming and 1 youth representative aged 16 through 25, who can also be a staff member, participant, intern, youth leader, or something of the sort. Um, and this is just to make sure that the assignments are manageable. We want the assignments to be as participatory as possible, and it's a lot easier when there's more than 1 person who's part of that assignment. Lastly, availability of the organization's representatives to participate for the full duration of the program, which is about 36 hours total, or about 6 hours per month, beginning in January and ending in June 2024 or 2025, excuse me. Something to note is that the PBA is specifically designed for organization representatives who are serving youth. So we require a minimum of 2 organizational representatives to apply from each organization. And there's no limit to how many people can apply. So minimum 2, but let's say you want 6 people from your organization to apply, that's totally fine as long as it's under the same application. And so next slide. These are some deadlines and dates. So some key dates to keep in mind for the application process. So completed applications are due Wednesday, December 4th by 11:59 p.m. Central Time. We will start conducting discovery and scoping calls, which are just general introductory calls to get a sense and interest of alignment for work. And we'll send out baseline surveys for interested organizations between December 9th and December 20th. The 2025 PBA cohort will be announced between December 16th and December 20th, and that's when we'll be signing letters of commitment for those moving forward in the application process. Those were chosen to be the 2025 cohort will meet other cohort members for the first time on their January 15th kickoff call. And then we'll have a bit of a break from the end of December to middle of January just to come back to from the long break. So also some things to highlight in the calendar. Again, that first kickoff call, and then our self-paced training videos will be from January to June. It's about 2 videos a month, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later if anyone has any questions. The monthly sharing and learning calls will also be happening once a month, beginning in January, ending in June. So 1 call a month, about an hour and a half, and this is the time that you get to share with your other cohort members. So this is what Kira and Glenda were talking about in that sort of knowledge exchange with other folks who are participating. And then the midline and endline surveys from March to June, and then the monthly office hours with me. So it's about an hour total from January to June. Anytime that you need help with assignments, how to apply lessons learned to programming, that sort of thing, I'm available anytime throughout the duration of the program. And then we end the program with a virtual showcase, which will be June 23rd. And that's when we all come together and just shared lessons learned and how we applied things and how we're moving forward with our work. So that's a total of 36 hours, and that is the entire program. So the application process, it's pretty straightforward. You can use this QR code right here on the screen. The applications are now live. So we'll also post the link in the chat. And this is the same link that is on the call for applicants that we sent out during the invitations for this call, which can be accessed on the website and on gfpusa.ngo is where you can find that info. And we'll also, again, send some info through an email after this call. When we share this recording for the info session, We'll also reshare the link that we sent in the invite. So the link will take you to this Google form or a Google form where you'll be asked about your interest in joining the PBA, answer questions about your organization and the work you do, and also some general questions on some basic info. All right, and that is brings us to our Q&A time. So this concludes our info session. We're opening up Q&A to you all. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll answer questions by order of hands raised, or feel free to just post a question in the chat, and we'll answer those as well. If there's no questions, that's totally fine too. We'll wait a couple more minutes to see if anyone has anything, and then we're going to move on to the next couple slides, then we'll close out.
Drew, I know we've gotten some questions recently about the two organizational representatives and why that's important, why we think that adds value, and why we're specifically saying that it should be folks that work with youth and even youth themselves if you have youth in your organizations that are in a position to participate.
Yeah, so to answer the second part of that question, so we designed the program to include youth and youth leaders as much as possible. We think it's really important that youth are leading a lot of the program processes of training other youth or working with other youth, only because they're a lot more informed, know a lot more on the ground than what we would as adults. So again, just sort of encouraging that youth leadership aspect, but also making sure that there's two folks we talked about earlier. The assignments are as participatory as possible. So one person doing it can be a bit challenging, but when there's a couple people doing it, there's a lot more insight. There's different sort of views of the same thing happening that can add to that overall like community needs assessment or community analysis or conflict analysis piece. And Lindsay, I don't know if you want to touch on anything else, but that's sort of the general idea.
Yeah, nope, that's great.
I have a follow-up question to that. If we were to include youth, would the meetings take place during the school day? Because we have teams that we could potentially school during most of our workday.
Yeah, so that is the meetings are set. So yeah, it would be during that school day. So we had one participant last year who was a junior in high school, and it was a bit challenging for him to join the calls. He did watch the recordings of the calls, but there was a lot of content that he missed. So yeah, if it's possible to have someone who's youth age 16 through 24 participate, the high school age may not work super well only because of the time constraints.
Yeah, just to add on that, I know that'll most affect US-based teens. If it was some of the international folks with a time difference, those calls might be in the evenings, kind of in that time zone. But I think, Jess, it was you who asked this question. We put kind of like a disclaimer on this in the call for applications. If we get several organizations that are facing that issue, then maybe we can brainstorm together what we could do as some sort of an alternative offering for the students that aren't able to join during the kind of working hours or school hours. So we just encourage you to reach out to Drew by email, and we'll have all that on the last slide in just a minute, and or to mention kind of any sort of constraints that you're facing in the application form. And we're really happy to try to work with you to make it as like inclusive as a process as possible. But last year we tried doing like the trainings, for example. Last year the trainings were live trainings, which we've changed that to self-paced this year. But we tried to do it on weekends to include the students. And we found even that was difficult because of sports. And then for folks with kind of family commitments, that was hard too. So it's just difficult for us to find a time that kind of works for all the people across all the time zones. But we really want to try to make it work. So let us know if you have any ideas or any concerns with that, and we'll try to work with you.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jess. All right, cool. Um, well, if there's no other questions, we can move on to polls. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for the time you committed to this call. If there's any other thoughts or questions that do come up, feel free to reach out to me, as Lindsay said, and I'll be available to answer any questions. As you see, the evaluation poll just popped up. I think it's about 5 questions. Um, please answer them. It takes about a minute to finish it. It's really helpful for us to just gauge interest. But yeah, once we're done with this, we will close out. Um, yeah.
Thank you for those that are filling this out. We'll wait maybe like 30 more seconds. They say feedback is a gift, and this is really helpful for us to get some like real-time feedback from you all about how we're doing and how this is hitting your needs. Amazing. Almost everybody has filled it out. Okay. I think we will end it. I'll end the poll.
Yep. Go ahead and end the pool. Okay, cool. So that brings us to the conclusion of the call. So thank you everybody so much for joining us, and thank you for your time and for the questions. Again, a special thank you to Glenda and Kira. Thank you again for coming here and sharing your experiences and sacrificing time during the busy season at So Kids Soar. If there's any further reflections, please feel free to reach out. We'll send this recording for this session and the application details out shortly. So yeah, thank you everybody again, and we look forward to the possibility of working with you all, and I hope you enjoy your week. Yes. See you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.